The Pain Journal, Bob Flanagan. Foreword. When Bob Flanagan began the Pain Journal on November 22, 1994, he only had another 408 days to live. He knew this, and he didn't. The exact hour of his death is a subject he returns repeatedly to in the journal, with mordant wit, though certainly there are others, the real or imagined betrayal by friends and associates in the art and literary world, the exhilaration and futility of producing and exhibiting artworks, and the furious contradiction between his lust for physical pain as a masochist and his rage at the involuntary pain that he was now subject to. All of these thoughts arise in tandem with the banal minutiae, also faithfully recorded, of the daily life of someone who is sick and dying. The Pain Journal reflects an extraordinary, courageous life, but it's just as much about the ordinariness of death itself. Bob Flanagan was born with cystic fibrosis in 1952. The disease, first named and discovered in the mid-50s, killed most people of his generation during childhood. In his 20s, Flanagan did not expect to live beyond his early 30s. At the beginning of the Pain Journal, he has just turned 42. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder which kills a person slowly through the body's overproduction of abnormally thick mucus lodging in the lungs, which becomes a host for bacterial infections. Lack of sufficient oxygen caused depletion in the blood and brain, hence the excruciating headaches, and ultimately the person drowns in his own secretions. And so the Pain Journal chronicles Bob's final year, in which he is the subject of a bricolage of medical interventions aimed at alleviating the disease's symptoms, while the disease itself, untreated and ultimately untreatable, gathers steam. Flanagan began to document his coexistence with the disease in the mid-80s in his works with his wife and collaborator Cherie Rose. When they met in 1980, he was a poet, part of a group of younger writers including Amy Gersler, Dennis Cooper, Benjamin Weissman, and Jack Skelly, who found each other at the LA Literary Center Beyond Baroque and formed an influential and supportive gang. He was also, child of two Irish Catholics, a masochist, a fact which he immediately announced to Cherie Rose, who at that time was, as Dennis Cooper wrote in Art Forum, a housewife turned punk scenester with a master's degree in psychology, with no experience with S&M. Rose quickly rose to it. But while Bob told her that his greatest dream was to live chained up inside the basement of her Westwood home, Rose had other plans. Their relationship was very public. As Cooper recalled, Bob was an exhibitionist and Cherie loved to shock people. It wasn't unusual to drop by and find the place full of writers, artists, and people from the S&M community, all flying on acid and or speed, Bob naked and happily enacting orders from the leather-clad Cherie. So it wasn't a great leap when the two, at Cherie's prodding, mounted an extraordinary photo collage, vignettes from their SM play called The Wall of Pain, at a Beyond Baroque show of writers who make art in 1982. Together they continued to make artworks, installations, and videos from their life together, SM acts, which were often staged against hospital beds and oxygen tanks, the paraphernalia of Bob's continued medical maintenance regime, culminating in the production of Visiting Hours, a show which filled the Santa Monica Museum and rocked the art world in 1992. The last year of Bob's life, 1995, found the two in a mid-career flurry of travelling shows and interviews and panels, which he finds it increasingly difficult to do. He and Rose are collaborating with the filmmaker Kirby Dick on a documentary film about Bob's life, which would eventually be completed as Sick, The Life and Death of Bob Flanagan, Super Masochist, and go on to win the Special Grand Prize at Sundance 1997. That summer, he drags himself out of his hospital bed to appear one last time at a summer camp for kids with cystic fibrosis, where he had been a counsellor and director for 17 years. It is a generous and triumphant performance that is documented in the film. By 1995, he had become notorious for the ingenious uses for his body he and Cherie had devised. But meanwhile, during the insomniac small hours of the morning while the TV drones and Cherie snores, he agonises about his body's disappearance. Cystic fibrosis, like other lung diseases, causes a slow wasting. The only thing that he sees left of it most nights is his penis, and he worries constantly about how and whether he could use it. While he became best known for his multimedia works with Cherie Rose, Flanagan was essentially a writer, and it's no coincidence that he would choose the Pain Journal to be his final work. It is perhaps his bravest action, because while everyone might long for the good death, one which is absent of recrimination and regret, death is a wild card, and a person's death does not necessarily have much to do with the person that we knew. Throughout the year, his paranoid ruminations of betrayal are inseparable from his cogent thoughts about his work and his life, and his unwavering devotion to Rose and other friends. Extreme Pain does not afford the best perspective. For its truthfulness alone, the Pain Journal is a great literary work and document. As Flanagan's friend, the critic Deborah Dreyer, has said, it is completely transparent, an essence of what he was going through. Chris Kraus.